There is a fine line between provocative and irresponsible, between speaking an inconvenient truth and spouting off in ignorance. Most columnists try very hard to stay on the right side of that equation, but for some topics, where you draw those lines depends on whom you ask.
Conservative columnist George Will thinks liberal academia is ludicrous. That point in his Washington Post column last week surprised no one. But Will went on to question the supposed campus epidemic of rape, calling the statistic that 1 in 5 women are sexually assaulted in college preposterous. Will then suggested it was a dubious number because when colleges and universities make victimhood a coveted status that confers privileges, victims proliferate. Cue the howling.
Guess some people just don't get it.
Should George Will still have a job?
Apparently not, according to one women's rights group that's circulating a petition demanding that the Post fire George Will. Meanwhile, Will stuck to a safer topic in his follow-up column: how Eric Cantor lost his job.
So, the more carefully I read this column, I mean, there were things that he said that were intentionally provocative, you know, victims proliferating because being a victim gives you a privileged status. But I have questioned statistics like this my whole life. This is one of the things I do. You know, every 16 seconds somebody is abused by a husband or a boyfriend. The numbers never add up. And it's very, very unlikely that those statistics are accurate. I'm going to be doing another story about that soon. You know, but well, CNN got in trouble with that. You know, the number of shootings after Newtown. It depends on how you count them and what you're counting in those numbers. And that's the same with this because it's a catch-all. You know, anybody who's been, you know, felt uncomfortable or felt forced versus raped versus it's all in one. And that's basically what he's saying. You can't count every single incident as an act of assault or necessarily a rape.
That's not what he was saying. What he was saying with his ignorant self was that, you know, rape somehow constitutes a privilege. That's what he was saying. If his column was about numbers, maybe I could hear that. No, he mentioned numbers, and then he went from there to say, these people are crying rape because it gives them a privileged status. Are you insane? I mean, really. So if you want to talk about numbers, all right, have a thoughtful discussion about, here are my complaints about the numbers. I might disagree with you, but I might not. I might follow you on that. But to suggest that somehow now college campuses are hotbeds of progressivism because women want to have a privileged status to claim rape is so disgusting. I can't even, we're not even talking about facts. So I would just say, because you said in your piece that, you know, people expected him to come from that way. Actually, I don't. I expect him to come from a conservative viewpoint that is thoughtfully presented that I may or may not agree with. I do not expect him to be disgustingly incorrect.
Taking on liberal academia is what everybody expects, but this took people by surprise.
I think he's disgusting, and he's not dealing with a set of facts. I can always argue, we can always have a thoughtful discussion on different sides of the table if you start with some facts. But you can't put on the table that saying that you've been raped is crying to be a privileged status. That's unconscionable.
Do you think he should be fired?
I can't even get to whether he should be fired or not. I just want to talk about the content. And one of the people that we read in criticizing him said he was concerned, as I am, that some of the columns that he's written lately, this guy is not the intellectual, thoughtfully prepared, conservative person it used to be. He's like some nutcase now. I don't know what the deal is.
He's lost a few feet off his fastball over the years. There's no question about it. You know, I went after George Will a few years ago for just flatly misrepresenting data about climate change, and then when he was confronted on it, refusing to acknowledge that he had misrepresented the data. I don't want to, what I'm going to say, I don't want this to be taken as I'm giving him a pass, but in this particular case, I don't think he went beyond the bounds of opinion. He wasn't misrepresenting facts, he just expressed an offensive opinion. And I suppose I should be more offended than I am, but it was an offensive opinion, and, you know, be that as it may.
You know, I think that I would say two things. Number one, I don't think he should be fired. The Washington Post isn't going to fire him. Your job is to be provocative when you have the platform that he does. But I also think that the argument over whether this percentage was preposterous or was missed this or that, those are irrelevant. And you're right that when you're talking about victims here, and there are real victims, and whether that number was 20 or the percentage was 12, there are real victims there. That's what the story should be about. And but if there is a place where I think a conservative columnist could go, and he started to get there, it's that these cases, though, are very complicated for a university to try to sort through.
I think the thing that he's making the point about the 20% is this movement afoot now for people to say don't give to your alma mater until they have these open policy, these sexual assault units and all that. It's like, so this is a movement based on numbers. Well,
and that was the other victim that he was making there was academia, which he's always happy to do because academia is a hotbed of liberals. But I think that what is a serious discussion that we need to have is how complicated it is for universities to deal with these issues, particularly when they don't have law enforcement authority.
As the dean of BU, you should know.
I think there's another serious issue, and that's, in my view, the conservative view should be one that's a little bit, oh God, I shouldn't use the word broader, I'm afraid. It should be deeper and longer lasting. And the view here ignores what's happened over the decades and over the centuries as far as these cases, when you never recognize these cases. And just that a conservative thinker would not acknowledge that seemed very strange. And also, to, again, take it to an extra, I'm just trying to word the void broaden, I don't know, to look at the military. And the same thing is happening in the military, where you have a lot of conservative people running the military, and they are acknowledging that this problem has never gotten the attention that it needs to have over the years. So I think he's missing some very, very big points in making a conservative argument.
Even if he wants to have a data argument, fine. But here's data that's correct. The numbers have gone up because now, finally, some young women feel there is some space for them to come forward. But there's many more that haven't. See, I know this story personally from friends of mine. I've watched them fight at university, to the point now that police are saying, don't go to the university. Come first to us. This is a crime. This is how little some of this stuff is being reported. So to Roy's point, to not acknowledge that as reality, to not understand that, and then to say, and oh, by the way, the numbers are wrong too. Well, you're just, come on.
It was a terrible call.
It wasn't his best.